Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Let's go. There will be more chances in the future. Yuan Gaohan snorted coldly, a hint of fear in his heart. The value of these golden tadpole-like characters was even higher than that of the Starlight Soul tampering technique. Deciphering each character was a great fortune that could not be bought with even 10,000 gold. After that, Yunxiao did not mention the tadpole-like text again, but began to rummage through the ruins. This place had already been carefully cleaned up by the Sanctum's people, so there was absolutely nothing good left behind. Sure enough, apart from the murals, nothing was found. The murals were intermittent and could not be pieced together into a complete story. They were probably telling some things about the sacrifice. The entire ruins were extremely vast, and what they saw was an endless land. On it were the remains of buildings of the same style, which had not weathered in the starry sky and retained a great deal of their original appearance. In ancient times, it should have been the residence of some sect or clan, but for some reason, it had become a battlefield and was even abandoned in the outer space. Although these buildings have suffered heavy losses, they should have been destroyed in one go back then. They haven't suffered any further damage over the countless years, which means that there are no immemorial astral winds here. Yunxiao turned around and stared at Yuan Gaohan, waiting for him to explain. Yuan Gaohan was secretly shocked by his careful observation and said, "The sanctuary has investigated these places many times. There's a special scroll of the desolate ancient land in the library, which records several conjectures about the formation of these outer realm ruins as well as the situation of the immemorial astral winds. One of the most credible theories was that when this ancient desolate land was abandoned in the outer space, a large amount of violent power was still wreaking havoc on it. When these powers reached a balance, they formed the most primitive wind. The strong wind destroyed all the buildings on the land. At this time, one or several powerful people couldn't bear to see this piece of land destroyed, so they worked together to open up a space and imprison the wind. Over countless years, it slowly evolved into the omnipresent astral wind." Imprison? Yunxiao frowned and said, "Which idiot made this speculation? If the ordinary wind had the ability to imprison it, it would have been destroyed. If it was to protect the ruins, why would it need to imprison it? Wouldn't it be better to just destroy it? Let's not care about that. Where is the astral wind being imprisoned?" Yuan Gaohan was taken aback, but then he realized that it made sense. He looked at Yunxiao strangely as he pointed to the sky and said, "Just above." Yunxiao followed his finger and looked over. The void was filled with starlight, and meteors streaked across the sky from time to time. It was extremely quiet, without any wind. "It's sealed by rule force?" The surprise in Yuan Gaohan's heart was getting more and more intense. He had casually pointed out something, but the other party was able to see through it. This kind of experience and analytical ability was simply too shocking. A trace of doubt appeared in his heart, and he asked, "Can you tell what kind of rule force it is?" With a hesitant look on his face, Yunxiao looked around under the starry sky and said with a frown, "It's definitely not starlight. Could it be the power of the night?" Sealing the astral winds in the endless night was not a bad choice. "My soul power is too low, so I can't sense it at all. I can only guess." "It's not the night, but it's really rare for you to think of this," Yuan Gaohan said with a smile. "Not night? That's really strange." Yunxiao made a shushing gesture and began to guess with great interest. His eyes kept observing the starry sky, trying to find some clues. "It's neither the stars nor the night sky. Under this starry sky, what kind of power of laws can hide the elemental power of the immemorial astral wind without a trace?" Yunxiao's face suddenly changed as he cried out in shock, "Could it be the power of time?" This time, it was Yuan Gaohan's turn to be shocked. A huge wave was set off in his heart, and he was a little stunned. He looked at Yunxiao in a daze and muttered to himself, "How did you guess it? Even Han Yinshan doesn't know about the laws of time." As expected. Yunxiao's eyes flickered as he looked at the starlight in horror and said, "It's actually the most difficult power of time to figure out. The person who sealed this wind must be a god realm existence. With such power, even the immemorial astral wind can be annihilated. Why is there a need to seal it? Yuan Gaohan was also taken aback. He had never thought about such a question, and now that Yun Shao had pointed it out, he also felt that something was wrong. Moreover, his previous speculation seemed even more nonsensical now. Then how do we break it? Yun Shao looked at Yuan Gaohan and asked. He was just curious about those questions, but it didn't matter. Even if there were any questions, they would have been buried after so many years. It was only then that Yuan Gaohan came back to his senses. He no longer dared to underestimate Yun Shao, and even regarded him as an equal. It can't be broken. The power of time is very simple and can only seal the astral wind within 24 hours. As long as the sealed wolf star, jade husband star, and big dog star form a line, starlight will shoot down and open up the astral wind, allowing it to transform into everything. He seemed to have seen the power of the immemorial astral wind before, and his face turned pale. Yun Shao looked at the 3 planets and saw that the wolf sealing planet and the Daquan planet were already in the same line, while the jade husband planet was on the left in a straight line, and it would take some time for it to arrive. He stared at the 3 vast stars and asked, 3 stars in one line, it should be within the Z period. This means that the immemorial astral wind will appear once every 24 hours? Yes, but it didn't appear for a long time because only when the 3 stars form a line and shoot down the power of the stars can the law of time be opened a line. I'm very curious, why do you want to find that astral wind? Anything, even if it's a soul like me that can take human form, will be directly eroded away. If you want to cultivate with the help of the wind, I advise you to give up on that idea, lest you die. Although Yuan Gaohan did not have a good impression of Yun Shao, he still cherished his talent, so he could not help but try to persuade him. Yun Shao was not very confident either. The point was that the Divine Realm tablet had run out of spirit chi. Even if he had the breathing earth, it was still unknown whether it could resist the primordial astral wind and collect it. I won't do something I'm not confident in. Since it will appear every 24 hours, there's no need to rush. Let's observe first. He walked to a broken pillar and sat down cross-legged, waiting quietly. Yuan Gaohan became more and more curious about Yun Shao. Even he could not keep such a calm mind. And as they gradually got to know each other, Yun Shao kept giving him a familiar feeling, but he could not remember what it was. What surprised him even more was that as soon as Yun Shao sat down under the stone pillar, he became silent and blended into the surrounding environment, reaching a state of natural Tao and the unity of man and nature. All of this was hard for Yuan Gaohan to understand and accept. The words and actions of the young man in front of him were the same as those old monsters who had lived for hundreds of years. However, under the divine sense of his 8th-layered soul, the other party was definitely not possessed by any spiritual sense and was definitely not even 20 years old. He's actually so bold as to cultivate without worry. Isn't he afraid that I'll take the opportunity to kill him? Yuan Gaohan found it hard to understand. Even if the other party had a 9th-rank soul-devouring flag in his hand, in this kind of environment, his 8th-rank soul power's full power attack was almost 100% able to take his life. What made him so bold? Could it be that there's a hidden card that I can't detect? Yuan Gaohan couldn't help but want to make a move a few times, but he eventually restrained himself. He didn't know what was going on. Was it out of fear or admiration for this young man? After a violent struggle in his heart, he finally endured it and sat down cross-legged. After Yun Shao sat down, he went straight into the Divine Realm tablet. The world inside was getting darker and darker, like a deflating balloon. All the mountains, rivers, and plants were withered, as if it was the end of the world. His brows were tightly furrowed. The situation was worse than he had expected. This was probably the situation. Although he had broken the armillary sphere's axis, he had also fallen into a desperate situation, as if it was the end of the world. With a wave of his hand, Yun Shao threw a large number of primordial stones into the air, all of which he had extorted from Qing Luo and Shan Wudi. They piled up in the air and formed a huge cube, floating in the air like a small mountain. Even if all of the ore veins that had insufficient spiritual energy were refined, they might not have so much. He began to carve out a formation around the vast amount of primordial stones. Every stroke was very careful and all of them were suspended around the primordial stones. Golden light flashed and spread out in all directions, causing the sky to be filled with golden light. After doing all that, Yunxiao willed a few beams of light to land beside him. They were the people in the Divine Realm tablet, all of whom were martial emperors. Duan Yu Jiulin, the three people from the Palace of Holy Fire, and even Situhang and Gu Yuesheng were summoned by him. They were baffled at first, but then their eyes lit up when they saw the shocking Yuan stone. You really have a way. If you don't get some primeval stones, I'm going to be a dried-up man. Duan Yu laughed and rushed forward. The astonishing yuan qi that was emanating from the beast made him want to take a few bites of it. After a few breaths, he felt refreshed. But, before he could take a few steps, he was stopped by Yunxiao. He blew his beard and glared at him as he said, "Why? Isn't this primeval stone for everyone to split?" The rest of the people were also confused, but they were more concerned about when they would be released. Except for Duan Yu, everyone else had been captured by him. Although there was no lack of cultivation resources here, what was the point of cultivating if he had to stay in this damn place for the rest of his life? Even Gu Yuesheng, who had always been unruly, could not help but feel a little scared during this long period of time, and he was really afraid that Yunxiao would lock him up for a lifetime. Yunxiao's eyes swept across everyone's faces like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. There's something wrong with the Divine Realm tablet this time. I'll need everyone to work together to help me absorb the immemorial astral wind. These primordial stones will be used to maintain the operation of the Divine Realm tablet. I'll teach you how to operate this formation now. Everyone was stunned and didn't understand. Only Gu Yuesheng's expression changed drastically. He took a deep breath and said in horror, "Immemorial astral wind? That all-conquering wind elements. The immemorial astral wind?" Yunxiao's face was expressionless as he nodded and said, "That's right, it's the immemorial astral wind. Although the Divine Realm tablet has lost all its spiritual qi, I have the Earth's breathing earth, which can fix everything. With everyone's help, there's still a certain degree of confidence in absorbing the immemorial astral winds." Gu Yuesheng was shocked and mumbled, "Breathing Earth Swan and I, why should we help you? When are you going to let us out?" He asked the question that everyone was most concerned about, and all of them looked at Yunxiao with pitiful expressions. No one dared to be arrogant again. "It depends on your performance," Yunxiao said with a smile. "If the absorption of the immemorial astral wind goes smoothly, I can let you all leave. However, if you fail, you can rest assured and break through to the peak of the martial supreme realm here. You can break through the void and leave on your own." His cold voice resounded in everyone's hearts. Then, they heard the sound of people gulping. Really? Gu Yuesheng did not believe that Yunxiao would let them go so easily. "I always keep my word," Yunxiao snorted. "I'm just afraid that you won't leave." It was a vast starry sky outside. Even if he let them all out, they wouldn't be able to return to the realm of heavenly martial arts. At that time, they would still follow him obediently, and he wouldn't be breaking his promise. "Good. You said it yourself." Gu Yuesheng was overjoyed. Although the risk of absorbing the immemorial astral wind was extremely high, there was at least a glimmer of hope. Being locked up here and only having time to pass every day was simply driving him crazy. "How are we going to cooperate with you? Tell us clearly, don't make any mistakes." This time, he was even more serious and anxious than Yunxiao. The rest of the people were also listening carefully. This was their only hope of obtaining freedom. It was much easier than he had imagined to teach them the formation. In the end, he took out some vitality stones and medicinal pills, allowing everyone to recover to their best condition and wait for orders. Meanwhile, Yunxiao returned to his body, took out some primordial stones, and slowly absorbed them while chatting with Yuan Gaohan. He had been reincarnated for 15 years and knew nothing about the changes in the peak of the continent's experts. He immediately got a lot of information from Yuan Gaohan. Yuan Gaohan did not hide any secrets from Yunxiao, and he told him everything he knew. He also found it very strange that he talked to Yunxiao like he was talking to an old friend, without any barriers of age, cultivation base, or status. At the same time, what shocked him was Yunxiao's speed of absorbing primordial energy. The primordial stones he took out were all mid-grade primordial stones, and they would turn into a pile of powder without any primordial energy when he held them in his hand. The shining white primeval stones were like large pieces of fat meat, being swallowed by his palm. Yunxiao was just bored, so he seized every minute to cultivate. Otherwise, if thousands of primeval stones exploded and were absorbed in one breath, his jaw would drop even more. But even so, Yuan Gaohan was still shocked. The primordial stone powder scattered on the ground, and when he swept his divine sense over it, he could sense that there was almost no primordial qi left. The speed and cleanliness of the absorption of elemental energy made him shocked. He said in a deep voice, "What method did you use to be able to absorb a vitality stone so quickly and quickly?" Yunxiao had just absorbed half of a primordial stone when he was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said, "Is there any way to do this? Isn't it just absorbing it into the meridians, circulating it around the body, and returning it to the dantian?" Yuan Gaohan frowned as he stared at Yunxiao's right hand and said slowly, "This method of yours seems to be extremely similar to a cultivation technique." Yunxiao's heart skipped a beat as he asked carefully, "What cultivation technique?" Yuan Gaohan raised his head and stared at Yunxiao's eyes for a while. They were as clear as crystal, without the slightest ripple. He was slightly startled. If this young man could still pretend under the gaze of his 8th-tier soul body, then he was really a monster of the ages. It seemed that he really didn't know, or maybe he was overthinking. One chi of creation technique.
Ha!
How could that be? Yunxiao gave a dry laugh, then said with a calm face, "I've heard of this cultivation method before. It's said that by cultivating this method, the speed of absorbing vital qi is several times faster than that of ordinary warriors, but it has long been lost." Yuan Gaohan licked his lips, seemingly envious of that kind of cultivation technique. "It's not lost. This cultivation technique was first cultivated by the army-shattering martial sovereign, Gu Feiyang. After Gu Feiyang died 15 years ago, at least a few of his disciples still managed to master this cultivation technique." Yunxiao's eyes flickered as he said with a smile, "Since this technique is so powerful and Gu Feiyang is dead, won't the Holy Region try to get his disciples to benefit everyone?" Yuan Gaohan's expression changed slightly, a barely perceptible light flashing through his eyes as he said with a straight face, "Humph. The holy city of Misty Snow is the holy land supported by all martial artists in the world, gathering the righteousness of the world, punishing evil and promoting good. How could they do such a despicable thing as you said?" Yunxiao's face darkened, and he snorted coldly with an undisguisable look of contempt. "Do you dare to guarantee what you just said? As long as you say dare, I will remember it in my heart and believe you." Yuan Gaohan's old face blushed slightly as he said in embarrassment, "Humph. What does a kid know?" He raised his head and looked at the 3 great stars in the distance. His eyes gradually focused and he said, "Soon, get ready." Yunxiao looked over as well. The 3 stars of Fenglang, Jade Man, and Big Dog suddenly became brighter than usual. The light yellow astral power was like a candle flame that was getting brighter and brighter. From their perspective, the 2 stars of Fenglang and Yufu were completely hidden behind the large dog. The 3 stars gathered in a line, and it seemed to contain some kind of law. A powerful energy field spread out, and the surrounding was filled with starlight. Then, a beam of starlight shot out from the sealed wolf planet, which was the farthest place in the sky, connecting with the Jade Man and the Big Dog. It fell in a straight line, heading straight for the ruins where Yunxiao was standing. What kind of existence is he to use the stars in the sky and the ultimate universe to set up such a time seal? Even Yunxiao had a feeling of looking up at this moment, as if he had seen a bright door slowly opening for him at the peak of martial arts. That powerful beam of starlight crossed the starfield as if it was passing through layers of space and time. It represented the mighty power of the universe and the end of the world. Under the powerful shock of the beam of starlight, both Yunxiao and Yuan Gaohan felt that they were extremely insignificant, as if they were just a drop in the ocean. Under the starlight, the 2 of them seemed to be in a daze. Their shadows were elongated and reflected on the endless ruins. It was as if the endless night had merged into their thin shadows. Boom. Just as the beam of starlight was about to land on the ancient barrens, it seemed to be blocked by some force. It blasted into the void and bloomed. The dark night became as bright as day, causing one's eyes to hurt. At that moment, Yunxiao's eyes instantly turned into crescent blood moons, distorting the powerful starlight power and reducing the impact on his body. Yuan Gaohan wasn't shocked, but rather happy. He cultivated the starlight soul refining technique, and under the circulation of the divine art, the power of the starlight was like hundreds of rivers pouring into the sea, enriching his body and making him feel extremely comfortable. Yunxiao frowned slightly when he sensed Yuan Gaohan's joy. The cultivation method of the starlight soul refining technique flashed in his mind one by one. The husband's soul is pure and without impurities, which is called the truth, and the eternal existence of catastrophes is one of them. When the heavens obtain one, the sun, moon, and stars will shine brightly. A strange feeling rose within his body, as if the pouring starlight was no longer a harm, but instead a great tonic. His body surged with desire, eager to absorb the delicious food. At that moment, Yunxiao's eyes returned to normal. Starlight sprinkled on his body, and he closed his eyes slightly, letting his body feel the power. The star force seeped into his body through his skin, through his blood, flesh, and meridians. It actually made his soul feel peaceful and comfortable. The demonic dragon also opened its eyes and looked at the falling starlight in disbelief. It was indescribably happy and muttered to itself, "What an amazing cultivation technique. Gu Feiyang, you're too damn lucky. All the good things in the entire realm of heavenly martial arts have been taken by you. This starlight soul refining technique is comparable to your great expansion divine technique." Yunxiao was overjoyed as well. Although the two were both soul training techniques, the great expansion divine technique could improve and restore one's soul power through one's own cultivation, which was equivalent to an internal cultivation technique, and could also be used in soul attacks. However, the starlight soul tampering technique absorbed external forces to replenish soul power, similar to how martial artists absorbed primordial stones. In the cultivation of the soul, it was recognized that it was the most difficult thing to do, whether it was through one's own cultivation or by borrowing external objects. This was also the main reason why alchemists were rare and respected. With this technique that can absorb starlight to replenish soul power, I won't need soul-nourishing pills anymore. Yunxiao muttered to himself, his face filled with joy. Beside him, Yuan Gohan's heart jolted, and he snapped out of his enjoyment. He looked at Yunxiao in horror and found that the latter was also devouring the starlight like him. You, how did you learn it so quickly?